Hello everyone, and welcome to this new Odoo Insider session. So today, as you see, we are two. I am myself, Antoine Rousseau, and Pierre Conan.
Nice to meet you.
Also, the topic of today is a bit different from what you are used to with the other Antoine. So we are going to make a specific session on HR and payroll topics. So feel free to ask any questions you would have, I would say, regarding new localization in payroll or any apps, any new features you would like to discuss about in Odoo 18 about HR applications. But also, just to tell you, 2025 is about to make a few new changes as well regarding the schedule.
Yeah, let me zoom in a bit. So as you can see, the schedule will change for next year. Let me show you a bit larger. So we have this file that will be in the chapter where you will be able to see all the links to all the replays of the previous Odoo Insiders. So if you saw some interesting stuff, feel free to go there to watch it back. And then since starting 2025, now the new schedule will be starting at 9:30, not 10 anymore, and until 11:30. So feel free to join a bit earlier.
Yeah, and also next week and the week after will be handled again by Antoine Nuvel. So we'll give sessions about general questions, like you can come and ask anything you want. It could be functional, technical, about projects, existing projects. Like it's free, a free topic. So it will not be as today with, as we said, more focus on HR and payroll questions. Okay, and it starts already. So I see a first question here on Twitch. Is it possible to localize payroll only with Odoo Studio, or do we need SH development? Well, actually, I would say it depends. It depends on the country you are and what are the requirements that you have as well in terms of mainly of legislation. What we do at Odoo is that we are able to implement payroll for some of our clients, especially when they are located in Africa. So it's, let's say, making some studio customization is then enough to make it work. But we can also identify quite easily if we are going, say if some needs require some development at some point, and so it require to go to SH. One example could be like if one of the country decides that we need to provide, for example, a specific document declaration at the end of the year with a specific format, then we need to make a development for that, and so this will be something that we need to develop accordingly, and then to create a module for that.
And just to put a bit more context, when someone says localize payroll, it's because, for the one who don't know, payroll is really dependent on the country or on specific markets. So you indeed need to have specific rules to compute your payslip for your payroll for your markets. And therefore, that's what we mean by localizing. We have a localization, for example, for Belgium to manage our own payroll. And here it wasn't done on SaaS with Studio or on SH. It was done in the standard of Odoo with many developments to compute all the slips and all the different reports we need. So it really depends on your market, your localization. It is very simple or not. And depending on those requirements, we will be able to do it maybe just in standard or with more development in R&D.
Indeed, as well. That's really important to keep in mind that we want to keep it as much standard as possible because we want to benefit from everything that is around it. Also, when we mention localize, it could be as well that we want to make it, let's say, adaptable for some of the client, and so to import it again in some other client database. If you are used to Odoo Studio, indeed, you may know that, for example, if I come here, yes, in the database, if I make some customization with Studio, I am able to export it in a certain way. Maybe what you can do is to jump to the full screen.
Yeah, 1 sec.
Good. Yes, here just a small detail is that if I do some customization, I add fields, I want it indeed to make it suited for my payroll needs, then I can, with Studio as well, decide to export here all of my customization that I did with Studio and import it again in another database. But here I cannot choose exactly what I'm going to export as well. So that means that if the database is very customized for one specific client, then I will export everything with it. So that's why as well I think Studio is not maybe the best tool for that. It's suited, let's say, for one custom project for one client. But if you want to make something that is, let's say, scalable, that you can reuse for some other client, then let's say developing a module is probably the best option.
Either developing a module, or what we have done with some country in Africa is that you won't need any Studio customization if you don't create new fields. And why would you need to create new fields? To put some specific input that you will use month by month in your payslips. But we actually have a feature that is pretty good for that. It's just called the salary attachment. And this feature makes it very easy to give some amount or deduct some amount of the payslip for an employee on a certain period. And those can be our model that can be exported and imported. So if you have some specific one that you want to use, you can just create a big Excel with all the models needed. So that's what we do for the one where we don't develop a full localization. We just do an Excel sheet with all the models to be imported. So you will import the rules categories, the different rules, the structure type, and then all the salary attachment, and that will be the equivalent to have your own localization that you can then import on any database for maybe several customer or project that would be in the same market or localization, as we said.
I see that, Hilga, you added indeed one point to your question. So who in Odoo decides which country is to be localized in Odoo Online? Well, in Odoo Online or Odoo SH, I mean, it's the same, or even Odoo on-premise. Here, what we need to maybe discuss and clarify with you is what does it mean, let's say, to localize a country? Like, is it just, okay, I make it available, I just create a new module that contains some more data, some more fields, some more logic, or is it something else? And actually, it is something else, because if Odoo at some point decides to develop a specific localization for a country, it also means that we decide as well to make it, let's say, maintainable and let's say working for let's say the long term of another database. So it's a question of resources and making it let's say possible also from an R&D point of view to make sure that this localization can work for the long term. And so that's why here at Odoo, for now, it's maybe Pierre can adjust it afterwards, but for now we mainly focus on the countries where we have an Odoo office that is located, because of course we are able then to test it by yourself and see if it can meet at least our requirements regarding payroll. But you have also some few exceptions, as Switzerland recently, which has now a new localization in payroll.
Yeah. So it's really opportunistic. So we don't have any rules to say we're going to start with this country, then going for this one. The opportunity we have at Odoo is to have offices that can answer all our HR and payroll questions and help us develop the different rules. So that's why it's easier for us to develop in the countries where we have all those offices. Also, for example, Switzerland is a specific case where the government will define all the rules, and so it's very easy when you just go in the government site to see all the rules that we can then develop. And so it's a great opportunity there to make sure we can develop a localization that will fit all the needs. But indeed, if some partners, some people that really know everything about the payroll come to us, explain us how it works in the country, that they know how the rules are computed, that they have documentation about those rules, we will take it into account and then maybe do a localization for your country. So this is really chosen by the HRPO, so Geoffrey, who is the one managing all the localization. And if you want to send me an email to discuss about your localization, feel free to contact him at gmf@odoo.com.
I see that we have at least once again one more comment from Ilya, which tells us, but we know that accountants are working on Odoo Online in Belgium. I think you mentioned the fiduciaries mode that exists in Odoo, and that allows indeed some accountant to manage all of the clients through the odoo.com portal, and so one database then per client in Odoo Online, in a one app free most of the time, let's say, version of Odoo. That's something that we are working on as well for payroll. So there's possibility to create some one-up free database as well for your client if you are a company who manage the payroll for let's say for some other companies. But of course, this is something that requires first to have some existing localization that can be used. So we think it's going to happen step by step. If we take first example then of Switzerland, which is maybe the country that well, the localization that is the closest to be used in production, then it's going to start then by, of course, deploying the solution and then indeed providing as well some kind of format and solution for the fiduciaries and all the payroll officer to be able to manage payroll as well from that kind of interface in the online that we are used to with accountant as well.
All right, we have another question. How can I mark unpaid work automatically if system does not find any attendance for the day? So where do we see the attendance for the day? Usually it will be, if it's for the payroll, it will be in the work entry. So the work entry is in your payroll application. What is it? Let me show you here. It's really a screen where you see all the attendance, time off, out of job time of your employee. So if a contract is just starting, you will see the different work entries starting at the beginning of your contract. So this really depends on the contract of your employees. And that's where you will have all your attendances or a specific work schedule. So how are those work entries computed? Well, it depends of the contract of your employees. So when you pay an employee, what does it consist of? It's either you have a fixed work schedule and you're going to be paid each month for this work schedule. It can be based on a work hour basis. So maybe on the time you will badge in and badge out in the attendance application, or if you work, for example, in a restaurant, it can be based on the planning. And so this is defined on the contract. So if I go in my contract menu, you will see all the running contract for my different employees. And if I click on any of them, you can see the work entry source. So how are my different work entries going to be generated? And here I can choose if it's working schedule, attendance, and planning. And therefore, it will be automatically generated. If you want to change something because it wasn't correct here and you want to input some unpaid days, one way would be to just put a time off, unpaid time off on the employee. So I can do that, for example, for Audrey. I can say that on this month, she was off. Let me go create a time off for her. For Audrey, we said, or let's do it for her. And here I can choose some unpaid time off. So for this month, all right. And that's one way to show some unpaid days. So throughout the time off application, and once I do so, I will be able to see back in my work entries for Audrey the time off I just took, and if I click on it, my work entries now is unpaid time off. So that's the best way to show when people are working or not through the time off application and the integration with attendance, the work schedule, time off to payroll. And then if you want to just change it from here because you want to extract this information for your pay outside of Odoo, maybe you can just click on one, edit it, and then you can change the work entry type for unpaid. So those are two ways to change the work entries, so the time worked by your employees very easily.
Because I have maybe an idea about as well the question of Shakil, and maybe I'm wrong, but I still want to assume it. Maybe Shakil, you were meaning as well, okay, let's imagine that I have some of my users that are just making some attendances in Odoo. So they just badge in, badge out, and so they generate their attendances along the months. And maybe your question is, okay, but what if one day they decide not to check in, check out? Can I have a generation of an unpaid work entry automatically, then based on the fact that they did not check in and check out on that day? So no, that's something that is not, let's say, part of the standard at least of Odoo. So here if we come back to the definition of the work entries, we will assume then that if we work with that kind of process, we will get maybe some, let's say, attendances around the month, and maybe some days where there will be nothing, And so that's, let's say, considered as a day where nothing was recorded, and so an unpaid work entry. Then I would say it depends on the way you compute the salary as well. I guess that in that kind of situation, what could happen is that you pay your employee based on let's say, on the hours he worked during the month. And so depending on the hours then that were recorded in the attendance app, you would compute the salary depending on that. But yeah, this kind of, let's say, automatic generation of work entries based on some unactions in attendance is something that is planned for now. So yeah, tell me if that's something that you were meaning or not, or if you want to add something on that question, because it is interesting, but I guess we at least answered part of it. Okay, so next question, Naufal, who asks us, can you list the African countries where payroll is already available? Example, Morocco.
Yeah. Should I go?
Yes, you can.
So it's true that there is a lot of African countries, and we only have for now one office in Kenya. So we have developed a standard localization for Kenya. So it's very easy for the different Kenyan office to manage our payroll and the payroll of the other countries. What we have noticed is that in Africa, usually payroll is simpler than in Europe or in other localization. So that means that you can do a specific project. So you will take some time with a business analyst. You will come with all the information about your payslip generation. So you will come with your Excel or how to compute your payslips, the different reports you need, and then hand in hand, you will create yourself your own localization easily. So for many countries, we can develop that. We don't have one yet for Morocco. That would work. But if you come with the specificities, we can look at it and then really check if it's doable in standard or not. And if it's not doable just with a consultant, maybe do it in standard with the R&D.
Yeah, that's it. I think here, like as Pierre said, we have two different situations that can occur. Like the first one would be, indeed, let's say first we analyze the needs. That's completely correct. And then indeed we have two different choices that are possible from our point of view. Is okay, we make a custom project because we think indeed maybe the market is very specific, or maybe it's just let's say more affordable as well for the client to just make something, let's say, quite yes, quite practical by using Studio, by using standard features, and that's it. And so we make it so that it works for that client at that moment. But indeed, if we are working with someone, or with a company that has a very high expertise of the payroll knowledge in that country, and that is ready to collaborate with us to build something that is standard and that will be part of the localization in standard, of course, we will always be open to this kind of opportunity. But we need to know first and make sure that indeed the knowledge is the right one, that we have, let's say, some documentation and proof that this is how it should be done in the country. And then indeed that could be part of the roadmap and part of the things that we are working on then for the new localization available.
But what can be said is that payroll is really getting bigger and bigger right now. It was for the first year one of the big points of Fabien at the Odoo experience, where he showed all the localization that were available. And it's really now the team is getting bigger and bigger in R&D, and we have more and more resources for payroll. So it's really, you are at the right time to discuss payroll. If some information, if you want to learn more about payroll, feel free to contact us. For example, we, Antoine and I, are creating a payroll service just to develop all the different functionalities. And there you really see if something can interest us, like some new smart classes where you can really learn how the payroll application works. Would it be doable to do it for your country as well? So we can assist you to analyze your needs, analyze your localization, see if it's in the pipe already. If it's one that we already do, then we can train you on it. For example, again, Switzerland, it's very complex, but we already developed it. So now it's going to be merged very early. So starting early January, you will be able to download your Switzerland payroll localization, and then you will be able to do your payroll for free in Odoo. So just with one user, you will be able to do the payroll of all your company. So it's actually a huge benefit. So for all the partners or all the companies that see us, it's again, without any additional cost, a huge feature that Odoo is putting into place for free, and really to make sure you take the most of Odoo, and it's the tool you use for your company with a full ERP managing also all your accounting, payroll, and much more.
I don't know what you think, Pierre, but here we are mentioning a lot, let's say, of very specific topics. Maybe some of the people that are listening to us are a bit lost, or maybe they just don't really know what we are mentioning or talking about. Maybe there are some curious people that are just here to discover more about payroll. So maybe we could briefly give an introduction about how is payroll, managed in Odoo. Where do we start? Where do we end? And when we mean the localization, what does it allow to do? Maybe what versus what happens when we don't have a localization? That everyone starts with the same basics.
Okay, so I'll let you start with that demo, and then maybe we can show when we have a localization installed, what is the difference?
Yeah, indeed. All right, so for that, let me jump first to the payroll application. So as someone who doesn't know what he needs to do here in payroll, so he would open the first application and he would ask himself the question, okay, so what do I need to do? The first thing that I really like from that application is the fact that we have some warnings. The warnings are here to tell you what are the things that you should care, about before generating your pay slips for the current month. Those warnings are standard, so they are coming even without a localization, so you have a few of them. But of course, if you install a specific localization, you could get some specific warnings. It makes sense. So a warning here is telling us, let's say if I take a quick look, two things. It mentions the employees and it mentions the contracts. And that's indeed the things that we need to start from when we want to, manage payroll in Odoo. And here, so we see that we need indeed to properly set up our employees. And we can see as well that we need as well to have a running contract and maybe still new contract as well that needs to be taken care of. So I will just listen to my warning. I mean, I'm just not knowing exactly what I'm supposed to do. So let's go step by step. And I will first indeed go to my employees app. If I open it here, that's really funny because that's an app that a lot of customers are using in Odoo. Let's say we're just organizing their own people, just taking a list of the private information and so on, but they don't really know this could be as well maybe the starting point of the payroll workflow. But if I open one of them, here I get a lot of, interesting information regarding the resume, the work information, as well as here, the hierarchy and how it is organized inside of the company. But I can as well here pay attention to two different tabs, which are first the private information and second the payroll tab, which is this one. Private information, again, is quite common to any kind of countries you would install in Odoo, except maybe for some of the things from some of the fields, sorry. But basically, those will always be the same kind of information. And basically, I would say you need to properly set them because, or at least properly set all the information that may have an impact on the pay. And as I show just before, some of the warnings can be set to tell you as well, okay, just be careful because this information is important for generating the payslip afterwards. So be careful to mention it as well. You were mentioning the fact that we may as well install a localization. So here in the employee form, the main difference that we'll get is maybe here in the payroll tab, the fact that some fields could be displayed, could be added, and for adding as well some information very specific to that localization. I think a good example is the one for Switzerland. Maybe, I don't know. Do you think it's relevant to see?
I can show it right now. So if I go in the other database where I do have the Switzerland localization installed, let me verify it's this one. How can I check? I will just go into payroll and see indeed I have all the configuration to implement my payroll. So I do have my localization. And then I will see the impact of this localization directly on my employee. Another way to see if it's installed, it's really to go in the apps. And here we'll be able to see all the installed apps. All right. So I will be able to see the one for Switzerland. Here is this one. So it's really this one that is going to be merged very soon. So don't look for it right now. It's not available yet, but we want to merge it before January. And with this ELM standard localization, we will be able to have all the specificities of Switzerland. So I do have it. What does it mean? If I go in my employee tab, I will be able to check Abigail, and you see again my payroll tab. So for now it's here. It might go back between private information and HR setting as soon as we merge. But now you can see all the fields that we need to compute our payroll in Switzerland. So here you see it's very specific fields, so SVAS number. So although in Switzerland we really know what this means, but you really see the difference, how it is different from one localization to another. Again, if I go on my contract, for example, I will be able to see specific fields that I need to enter to manage my payroll. So a localization is not that complex. It will actually modify your employees, modify your contracts, add some reports, and then with all that information, we will be able to compute your payslip based on a set of rules. So we have a lot of rules here for Switzerland that makes it possible to manage your payslip. I need some configuration about all my insurances. I won't be able to show you right now all the payslip generated, but here you can see already what it would look like if I had if I have a specific localization installed.
Yeah, I think here in that case, indeed, maybe if some of you have some questions related to the Switzerland localization, of course we can discuss it afterwards. But yes, you're right. So here we have a good idea about what is installed when we do this. So if I come back to just my standard workflow, and here, so as you showed quickly, we can indeed have access as well to the contract linked to my employee. And that's indeed the second thing that we need to take care of, to have a running contract. Because as we also saw at the beginning of the session, having a running contract means that we have some work entries that are generated, and the work entries are the thing that are used to generate the payslip, at least here in the case of, let's say, the Belgian localization, that is the one that we installed, but it could be as well the case for some African countries. That's usually what we do as well. So here on the contract, like we have the starting date, end date, which makes sense. We already discussed as well with the work entry source. The contract needs to be in running to make it work, knowing that there are some scheduled actions that allow it to move from new to running if the start date is reached, and from running to expired if the end date is reached as well. And here at the bottom, we have then some salary information that in that case that are once again used to let's say to define the benefits, maybe the deduction as well for each of my employee, for each of the contract as well, so that we can properly set up everything, and yes, accordingly generate the payslip afterwards. What Pierre mentioned as well in the beginning is that from here, let's imagine that we have some Belgian client, and it tells us, yeah, but in my company I have one specific advantage that is not part of the list. It's not a problem. Like, you don't need to, let's say, it's not mandatory for us to go to a custom plan or to try to do development for that. Here on the form, I still have access to my salary attachment, where I can indeed decide to add one more advantage that is not part, or benefit that is not part of the standard field of benefits, in order to answer indeed this kind of need, while still being standard and still benefit from that kind of solution.
So I think this answers most of legal questions about the algorithm behind payroll. So what we have to configure, as we said, is the employee, of course, all its information that are needed to compute payroll is contract. We need to know how much we're going to pay him. And then based on that information, the payroll will be able to compute the pay slips. How does he know the different rules? So the algorithm behind the different computation from basic to the basic to the gross to the net salary is based on your structure type. So on the employee, on the contract, you will define a specific structure type. For example, here the one for Belgium. So this will be installed through the localization. We will have in this structure type different structures, so different way to compute one specific payslip. So depending on your country, you might have to compute some payslip that have different computation. And here you have the list of all the one we might need in Belgium. For example, the standard one is the monthly pay, but we have the double holiday pay, termination fee payslip, employees 13 months payslip. So different computation, and you can see different rules. So here, what are the salary rules? Those are really all the rules, one by one, that will be computed to manage your payroll, to compute your salary. So if I go in the start one, you will see how a rule is computed, and this is really what's behind the payroll computation. You have one rule, so you have to define the category of your rule. It's really useful, for example, to put all the allowances together, all the deduction together. You put a specific code for your salary rule, then the sequence. The sequence will define the order of the salary rules, how they should be computed. then on what salary structure should this be applied? Is it an active rule or not? So if I want to deactivate it, I can do it easily from here without having to delete it. And then some of the rules should be displayed on the payslip, for example, the net, but some other from the employer part, for example, don't need to be shown on the payslip. So you have this field for that. Then you have other fields, view on employee cost dashboard, view on payroll reporting. But what is most interesting is then here, you have the condition and the computation of your rule. So the condition will define, do I have to apply this rule in my payroll computation? I have 4 options. So yes, this rule should always be computed. This rule should be done only if my, for example, contract rate is in a specific range. So some taxes are applied, for example, on specific range of salaries. Other input is a brand new feature we have on version 18. So if you are before that, don't worry, it's normal that you don't have it. It's really to be able to say, okay, I'm putting a salary attachment, so an input in my salary, and if that input is in my salary, then I will do a computation and a specific rule for that specific input. And the last one is if I want to do a Python expression, I can really come and develop here the condition that is based. So you really can do anything since you have this tool here to be able to do some Python condition and Python code for the rule. So this is the same, mostly the same for the computation, where you are able to use Python code without any maintenance costs. So to compute all the rules for your payslips.
Excuse me to interrupt you for that, but it could be a bit confusing maybe for some people, maybe not the one in the live because you are mostly partners, so you are maybe used to what is a Python code, but of course it could be confusing for some end users and most probably HR users who are not, let's say, used to develop in their day-to-day life. And of course, the idea is not to teach them how to develop Python code in order to be able to use payroll in Odoo. That's really not the goal. That's also, of course, why we want to develop localization and have some out-of-the-box solution that they can install and not even ask themselves the question about what is behind it. So here, let's say that we want to be transparent. We want solution to be very understandable from a technical point of view, but we want also it not to be, let's say, always customized or developed, but also to be just used as it is and to make sure that all the end users can, play with that without asking themselves the question, okay, but how do I need to code it behind?
I saw a lot of people say hello from Cameroon, hello from South Africa. Those are some of the countries for which we did the localization with consultants. So really, there is a lot of you that maybe are just this close to be able to compute your payslip for your payroll in Odoo for your project or for your clients. So really, maybe feel free to contact us. Feel free to contact who is responsible for your, who is your contact point at Odoo to discuss about payroll.
I also see that Frederick asked us a question like, do we have some integration process? So here with SDWorks in Belgium, I think that's an interesting question that where you have an answer.
Yeah, so we don't have really an integration, but that means we are not connected to their website, to their platform. Yeah, but we do have a configuration from Odoo to be able to export work entries. So work entries, we explained them before. It's really what changes from one month to the other for the Odoo, for the employees' work entries to manage your payroll. So you need that information each month to change the different payslips. And we have worked with those different social secretary in Belgium. So let me zoom in a bit. And you can see that we developed some export files that are compatible to their software. So we have done that with SDWorks, as you asked, Group S, Partner, UCM. We are working with Securex and more to have more and more social secretary working with us, compatible. And so what does this mean is that if you manage everything, all your HR in Odoo, at the end of the month, you are able to go to this reporting menu, go and export all your work entries, upload them in your social secretary, and they will do the final computation of your payslips. And then you can really do all your HR in Odoo. We are working in that option as well for other countries where it might be very complex to do the payroll, for example, in France. And when we don't have a localization ready in Odoo, so we have another option to still manage your HR in Odoo without doing the full payroll computation.
All right. Well, I see here a very interesting question, and I'm quite curious to see how we can do it, because I never did it myself, but I think I get a solution for that. Like I will read it, of course. So, question from Mohamed. Hello, could you please demonstrate the loan management process for employees? Specifically, we would like to see the workflow before granting the loan amount to the employee and the journal entry generated for the loan repayment by the employee. So indeed, in that context, so if I, of course, understand the question properly, we have two steps, indeed. So we have the loan that is granted first to the employee, which is mainly, from my point of view, let's say an accounting action. So we indeed, let's say, decide to allocate this amount to one of our employee. And then we have the reimbursement of this amount, which can be done indeed based on the payslip of the employees that each month, they decide to indeed reimburse part of it let's say through their salary. So let's try to do it then in those two steps. I think, as I said, the first one is mainly an accounting action. It could be done in two different ways from my point of view. It could be done by generating some bills where the vendor bill, where the vendor could be the employee. So that indeed, so we just generate an accounting entry for allocating this specific amount. And so, of course, this amount needs afterwards to be, let's say, reimbursed by the employee. So, for example, let's imagine, let's reselect here, yes, Audrey, and so we say loan. Let's imagine that we grant her, let's say, 10,000 here, so today, and we confirm it. So here then we get our first entry, and then we assume that Audrey is going to reimburse it, let's say, by paying, I don't know, 500 per month for the next, starting from next month. And so for that, we can come to payroll here in the contract and salary attachment and generate, then again for Audrey in that case, reimbursement of the loan, and here to select the right amount. So it could be attachment of salary, for example, in that case. And so we know that she wants to reimburse 500 and to reach a total amount of 10,000. I mean, we could modify the total amount indeed if we want to take into account some interest or some, let's say, added value, of course, that is the cost of the loan. But anyway, that's something that we can take into account in that case. So that's how we configure it, I would say. Then what's happening is that we need, of course, to have the corresponding rule in our structure in order to take into account that negative amount. Here we have it, of course, because this is a standard one. I'm just going to check if it is properly set up. So here, attachment of salary, which is here. That's going to take into account this amount that I've just defined and define it as with a minus sign here in the screen. So we can indeed then assess that this will be properly generated. And then, depending on that, what we'll get is that, so we can link this, let's say, rule of my salary to one debit and credit amount. And so we'll generate accordingly an accounting entry on that account in my accounting. And then we can just, let's say, decide to reconcile both entries afterwards to make sure that indeed the loan is reimbursed step by step by the employee afterwards. I cannot do it. Well, I could do it, but here I would say it's a bit, let's say, it's a bit some configuration that are needed, because here if I decide to select a debit or credit account, I will unbalance my global entry for my journal. So I need to properly set it up, to find the right debit and credit amount. But that's something that I guess would work in that case. So to be tested, but that's something that I think it's something that would look like this.
Great demo. I think it really answers the needs of loan. One other way is sometimes to use the expense. If it's not a loan, but rather the employee is paying for something for the companies, then he will use his own card that can be reimbursed in the next pay slip. And for that, you can just encode one expense. What do we have in expense? We have a specific configuration that says reimburse and payslip. So when you post an expense and it's validated by the accounting department. They will be able to pay you back and then pay you back directly from the accounting or in the payslips, in the next payslips you have.
I see a question related to what we just explained. So here, what is the difference between salary attachment and salary assignment? Like, to be honest, you should not, let's say, ask yourself this question because, like, you do whatever you want with salary attachment or salary assignment. I know it's a bit weird, but you need to appropriate yourself as well the solution. So here, in your case, it doesn't make sense to have salary attachment and salary assignment that are different. You can rename it or just archive it if you want. So you should just start from the ID. This is, let's say, some available other inputs types that are predefined in the database and that you can use or not at the end. But here, as I said, all these types are here in the list and you can modify it as you want. Basically, what you need to do is simply to have the right here that is relevant, that makes sense for your payroll, and then to have the corresponding rule as well in your structure of the salary. Here, I think, to be honest, that the salary attachment and salary assignment are both set up almost in the same way. Yeah. So basically, like, those are quite the same things, from a technical point of view. Then it's just the sense that you give to it that is important. I don't know if you know the definition by heart about what is the difference between both.
I don't think there is any difference. It's just that in Belgium, we have the two ways. In Belgium, some will be considered attachments. So will be, for example, if you crash your car, it's considered a salary attachment for some fund. If you so it's more for the deduction. Sometimes if you have a salary assignment, it's specific to some legislation, but the ID behind, the computation behind is, as you said, exactly the same.
I see here a question. Do you have the localized version for Indonesia, where we have now an office in Odoo office?
Yeah, so I do believe we have something for Indonesia. I would have to verify that because Indonesia is mostly managed by the hub of Hong Kong, so we don't follow as precisely all those localization. But it's a new office, so I'm not sure it's live yet. But since we have an office, we are working on it directly. And maybe if you send me an email afterwards, spike@odoo.com, I can verify the situation of that specific localization and come back with a more precise answer on that.
All right, I see that Shakil has added some comments based on his previous question. And the second part of his comments is indeed, let's say, making sense based on what I said just before. So if you're saying, if my work entry is based on attendance, then there should be an option to mark unpaid work entry automatically if employee check-in and check-out is missing for a day. So that's not the way it is working for now. It is true. I know that there are some, let's say, changes that are coming as well for the attendance app. I don't know if we should mention it or not. It's maybe a bit early, but
so yeah, it's there is indeed some attendances that can be computed on specific condition. So we've noticed that by working a lot on payroll and noticing that a lot of companies have specificities on how they're gonna compute the attendance if the employee is not there, how they're gonna manage extra hours, are they gonna pay specific extra hours in the week, different ways during the weekend. So we are creating a new features in attendance. It's still in the R&D, so I wouldn't say that it's developed yet, and so it still need a lot of, it's still a specification for now. But this specification, if it goes through, would let it make it possible to be very agile on how you want your work entries to be encoded based on your attendance. So is it in the weekend? Is it in the week? Is it in the working hours or not? And based on that, do a specific work entries. And once you have all your specific work entries, you can easily do the right computation of your payslips in Odoo. So the work entries, the different work entries will be computed with the salary rules to do some different computation based on your salary rules. So we have something for that. I'm not seeing the question anymore, so I'm not sure it's...
because the first one, I don't answer it yet. So if I calculate salary based on days hours, Odoo does not show week of days as work days in payslip. Then how can I calculate salary for work days and off days? But I guess that's still linked to the second point, then based on the attendance. Because if you base it on the work, let's say on the working schedule, what you can do, because if the question is to make sure to display all the worked and let's say unworked days during the month, then you can just fully set up your working schedule to integrate even like all the days of the week and then assign it to a specific work country type with what should be paid and unpaid. But it works, of course, if it has something that is, let's say, consistent in between the weeks. But it's true in the case of attendance for now, not making any check-in and check-out does not create anything, and not then in that case an unpaid work country.
Yeah, so it's actually by default, that's how it works. If you base your contract on your work schedule, it won't depend on your attendance, so it will consider you at your job every day and do a attendance work entry for that. If you base your contract on attendance, if you don't badge in, badge out on one day, then it means you were not working there. If it's a mistake, you can always go in attendance and correct it for your employees. So just if you are the HR manager and you want to change the attendance, you can just go here in management and really manage all the attendance of your employee. You can have a list view and create one attendance for a specific employee that might have forgotten to badge in, badge out. But if someone didn't badge in or badge out, well, it means they didn't work. And so by default, it will be an unpaid work entry.
Okay, next question. How can we segregate analytic accounts from payroll? Well, I personally see two different places where we have the link between analytic accounts and payroll in Odoo. The first one is located on the contract form. So the thing that we can indeed link one employee, one contract at least, with one analytic account. We did not activate it yet, so let's maybe do it first. Yeah. All right. And the second place is at the rule level. So the idea indeed is to be able to define one accounting account, analytic account per rule. So here first on the contract, indeed, so here we can select any analytic account that we want to be linked to to this kind of employee. And so accordingly, once we generate the journal entry based on the payslip, of course, this analytic account will be used, of course, to be linked to the corresponding entry in my accounting. And the second step where I can choose it is here on the rule. We have in the accounting tab the option to select as well an analytic account linked to that rule.
So what it means is that one way you really link one employee to one cost. So one is usually maybe if you have one employee working on one specific project, you will have one analytic account for that project, and you will input all the contract or the payment of that employee to that specific project. And the other way around is more saying all these specific rules for all these employees are related to one specific analytic account. And in that way, you really specify on the rule the analytic account, and it will be the same for every employee using that rule.
Yeah, it could be indeed, as you said, a project. It could be as well a department if we want to mention it here. So yeah, it depends, but that's something that we can do as well. Indeed.
I can see that pay tax rates are different country to country with slabs. Yeah, maybe just once. Yeah, sure. One zoom in, thank you. With slabs, how can we customize? So I'm not sure what you mean with slabs, but indeed, tax rates are really different from one country to another. What you have is that you can have different rule parameter in payroll. So if you are managing the same, usually you will have some different rules per country. And so in the rules of the country, you will change directly the tax rate. But if you want, you can also use the rule parameters. And here you see, for example, we have some example for Belgium, where you really see different rates for some taxes in Belgium. And so you can say, base yourself on that rule parameter. And if that rule parameter changes from one day to another, you can adapt it. So this is one way mostly to change time-wise. But if you really want to change in a specific tax rate, then you can have specific rule per tax rate. And then depending on your employee's situation, you will use one rule or the other.
Yeah, and yes, indeed. And you mentioned as well the pay, which is the pay as you earn, which is something that is indeed very common to many different countries that we already implemented here at Odoo. That's something that we have in mind as well. Like this is a kind of process that is very common, that is reproduced a lot in different localization as well. And indeed, every time we did it, as Pierre explained, we use this kind of parameters. The idea is once again to try to let the users go, let's say, as less as possible in the code of the rule, and but have access here to one quite, let's say, nice menu when they can get access to the specific parameter that they know and adapt the value by themselves without having to dive into the code.
But usually, you will have different tax rate per country, but also a different localization per country. So your localization will be based on your tax rate, and one localization per project, per company, with its own tax rates. So no problem with different taxes rates.
Next question. I see here's a German localization difficult. Well, it depends what you mean by difficult, but that's one of the future work in progress that we have next year, because we have also an Odoo office in Germany, and it's true that we know that there are some specificities linked to the market that maybe indeed that make it a bit more difficult to implement than some others localization in the world.
So basically, yes,
So
Germany is a very complex payroll. Like some specific Europe have very complex payroll. For example, Belgium, France, and Germany are very complex. And so indeed, that's why even those are big markets we want to target. We still work with social secretaries, so integration with the social secretaries, so other external provider, and we don't have yet a localization for them because lack of resources, lack of great documentation. But as Antoine said, it is a working process. And if we want to dream in 10 years, we would have localization for all the different countries of Europe, and you would be able to manage all your payroll in Odoo directly.
If I use an automation rule in payroll and trigger based on date field, nothing happened for maybe takes long times. Is it only for payroll app or for the rest of the apps when we use a trigger based on date field? No, I think there is no difference between payroll or other app. But if you maybe I can still help you about how to then probably choose your trigger for automation rule. I don't know, because of course maybe you know it already, but just to maybe explain to you what it means. Let me first activate debug mode to have access to a bit more tools. And here, indeed, just to show it to everyone, if I decide to create an automation rule here, I can indeed decide to base my trigger on many different criteria, and one of them is based on time conditions here, based on the days field, for example, that I can select. In that case, here, you need to know that the timing conditions will always be triggered based on another action, which is a scheduled action in that case, that you can find as well in the technical menu, which is going to, let's say, if I look for automation, here, yes, automation rule, check and execute. So it is an action that's going to go through all the different automation rules that are based on timing conditions, and are going to trigger them, every 4 hours. So that's how it is set up by default. So the first thing I would suggest you to do is to go and see if your scheduled action, has a delay that is short enough for you. Maybe you can decrease it. Of course, pay attention that by decreasing here the timing of this action, this is the frequency, so you increase the frequency. You also increase the load on your database, and so it may, of course, decrease a bit in terms of performance. But that's something that you can do. Something else that you can do as well is simply to choose another criteria for your automation rule. Of course, I don't add the context as well. But here, for example, what could be nice, but it's true that it depends also on what you are doing. But unsafe could be a good option as well, and you can decide to update here a date field or something else. But it's true that it's not maybe the right way to do it. Yeah. Or you can create maybe your own scheduled actions. It will involve a bit of Python code, but to make sure indeed that every time the delay is reached, then the action is defined. But
it's indeed. Just important to have some context.
Just to conclude, it's just not linked to payroll app regarding to the other apps.
But indeed, here we don't have the context of why you want this scheduled action based on the date field. So maybe if you put us some context, we can discuss a workaround or see what you really need and how to find an answer to it. But here, indeed, Antoine told you why or how it worked. If you tell us how, we might find another proposition for you to better maybe not use an automation rule based on the date field.
Okay, regarding the analytic accounts that we just mentioned, if the employee is working in different projects.
Yes, so indeed for now on the contract, you can only define one analytic account. It is a task again that we are working on to have it the same way we have in any invoice, to be able to have analytic distribution in that field that Antoine just showed. So for now, we only have it one way. So if you want to redistribute, you will have to do it later on in the accounting. And so this is the analytic distribution that is possible between different projects. So we don't have that feature yet in the contract, but it's indeed something that is also in the pipe to have directly there. But for now, you have to manage it on one project. We are more looking into developing payroll and making sure you can do your payroll before also having a lot of features analytic-wise in your based on your payroll, because you have some workaround for now to input the cost later on.
Okay, great. I see the question, but maybe it is not linked, let's say, to us or to Odoo, but yeah, from Sri Lanka, any help for recruitment process? It's a bit, let's say, I think, at least for me, too wide as a question. So if it is for the recruitment process in Odoo, maybe can you specify a bit more what you are looking to improve in your recruitment process, and we can help you. But maybe it's just also some question about how to recruit in Sri Lanka, and so for that, we are maybe not the best person.
Yeah. What we have is that we already did a lot of other webinars that are specific on recruitment. So you can look, for example, what's new in recruitment in Odoo, employee management from A to Z. So you really see all the recruitment flow. We did a previous webinar where we showed the recruitment flow. So recruitment is a very, very powerful application. Why is it so powerful? Is that because we need it in Odoo to manage so many people. So feel free to go to check out our previous replay where we showed a bit more the recruitment process. There is a lot of videos on that as well. If you precise what you need, we can answer more precisely. We will put the link of the previous Odoo Insider in the chatter, so maybe check it out. And if you want any help, maybe take a success pack where we can discuss with you the recruitment flow if you have any specificities in Sri Lanka. But I'm pretty sure Odoo is more and more powerful with recruitment, and with a lot of wow effects that really helps you as an HR manager getting more, saving a lot of time, and as the user, the applicant that will come to Odoo have a great experience, a fast process, a very clear documentation on your website, because recruitment is integrated with your website. So a very easy way to save time for the HR, the department, and a great experience for the user as well.
Okay, next question. How can we manage sandwich holidays concept? Time off does not compute Saturday, Sunday as holiday.
I think when it means sandwich holiday concept, it means like holidays in between. So, yeah, maybe between weeks. I don't think we are talking about meals here that we should do a specific meal rule. So, does not compute Saturdays, Sundays as holiday. So, this, usually it should. So, I'm not sure why. Oh, yes, it's indeed based on your work schedule. So since your work schedule, you don't consider that you're working on Saturday and Sunday by default, it won't be taken as an holiday. So I think I understand better what you mean. If, for example, I take some time off in my application from, let's say, tomorrow to the next week.
Yeah, but you already took some time off.
Yeah, but I will see it here. It only says one day and not take the weekend into account. This is because in most companies, in most countries, people don't work by default in the holiday, in the weekend. So a time off shouldn't be taken for that day. So how is this configured? It is really based on the work schedule of your employee. So if I look, for example, at Abigail, I can see she's working 40 hours a week. So when is she working those 40 hours? Only from Monday to Friday. So that means she's not working on Saturday and Sundays. So if she's taking some time off from 2 weeks, they won't be taken out. So one way to modify how time off are computed would be to here change your work schedule and say that these specific employees work during the weekend. So by adding line here to say that your employees also work on Saturday and Sunday, it will change the time off approach, and every time off paused for any day would count as one time off taken.
All right, I see it's 11 o'clock. Maybe it's time for a short break of 5 minutes. That's it. And then, yes, and then we come back to answer the rest of your questions. Hi again. So this is the end of the break. So it allows us to brainstorm a bit on the next question that we have in the chatter from Mohamed as well. So we ask us the following questions: how can we configure this? So in our country, where the number of work days can vary between 20 and 24 days per month, depending on the month, of course. Like we have maybe less days of work in February than in August, so it makes sense. He asked us, okay, but we still pay our employees for 30 days per month, whatever the length of the month. But if my employee is absent for 2 days, we still consider that he worked then 28 days. So we still deduct then the number of, let's say, off days from the 30 days for the month. So in that case, indeed, we need to adapt the way it is done in standard on Odoo, something that we partially mentioned as well. So if I come back maybe to my work entries, let's generate a payslip to show that. And maybe take, in that case, Odoo, which was quite a good example. Here, because we created just previously a few unpaid entries. If I decide here to generate my payslip, what I will take as let's say as an input of my payslip is here the summary of all the work days for that month, and here especially we can see let's say some of the attendances, some of the unpaid, for a total number of 23 days. But of course, then this amount could vary. And this table is then used especially to compute this rule, which is a basic salary rule. And so in that case, what we would need to do is to just change it and adapt the way the basic salary is computed in order to make it a bit more, let's say, consistent in between the months and not have this kind of variation in between. How can we do that? What I can suggest, of course, there are many different ways to do it. Okay, so here just an idea that you can maybe try to apply in your case, is to say then that the total amount of days is equal to 30. That's something that Pierre mentioned before. Like this could be defined as well in the parameters of your payroll. It's like you don't need to write it down, manually here in the code. You could decide to define it somewhere else. You could as well decide to create a new field, and define it on the contract or on the company. Like that's something that you can do.
Yeah. This just way of, as Anton is saying, putting it on the contract or the employee is interesting if not all your employees have the same number of days they have to work. So here we put in the rules. So everyone using this rule will have the 30 days parameter. If you have specific days per employee, then you can put a field on the contract. You say, okay, this employee is working 30 days, this one 29, this one 31, and then use that field in the rule that we are using now.
Correct. And then, so here then we have the number of days, and then what we could do is to decide to have the, let's say, the total of worked days, which would be the difference then between my total of days here, yes, and what I have in my table with the work entries, which is something that I can call with this kind of format.
Just zoom in a bit, so make sure it's very more clear for you.
How can we add the crochet? Just I'm not used to the keyboard.
This one.
All right, and so here, like we could have then the code of the work days that are supposed not to be then considered as a work day. So in that case, it could be like my unpaid time. And so this is the code that I can use. And so if I come back to my basic salary, I can then copy it again.
So while Anton is doing it, to explain it a bit more, because he's going very fast, he's used to that. What is going on is that you have the number total of days, that is a fixed parameter of 30 days. And then when you took some time off in your time off application, it changed the worked days in your payslip. So what it just showed with the different attendance and time off, unpaid time off. And so here we choose to consider the time off that was the code leave 90. So this is chosen on the time off type itself, or you can choose the work entry type. And then, so for those days, so for this type, you will then reduce the 30 days by the days off taken. So this is the difference done here. So here, as it says, on the time off type, you have the code. And now if you go back to the basic salary, so how is your basic salary computed? We have the computation for the days. And now what we have to do, Antoine, is compute the basic salary based on the total work days, right?
Exactly. And here what I actually have an idea in mind. What I can do is to set my result quantity as, let's say, the ratio between this. Once again, it's just, it's complete something that you could do different way, but that's something that I think could work nice as well. And here in my result, I'm just going to add simply a reference to my contract wage that I define then on my employee contract.
So for the one who don't know how this small Python code section works, you can define different variable that will have an impact on the computation of your salary. So for each rule, you will have one line on your payslips. This one line will have a total amount, and this total amount will be based on the perfect here. You see the total, the really left column will be the computation. Computation from you take the quantity times the rate times the amount of your rules. So the amount is the result is computed by result in your salary rule. The quantity is computed by result underscore QTY for quantity, and the rate is result underscore rate. So you can define those in your salary rule, and then afterwards, with what you define, it will be a computation between the three to give you the total. So if you just see result, it means you just input the amount, because by default, the result rate is 100% and the result quantity is 1. So 1 times 100 times result will just give you the same value for the amount and the total in your really left column, right column. So here we don't do it like so. We modify the quantity with result quantity and the result with contract wage, and we then want to do the computation of the two.
Yeah, and so here we can try. So if I click on compute sheet, I will expect my quantity to be updated with the ratio then in between my let's say actual work days and my total days in my months. And here, the amount as well to be updated. Of course, what I would also like is not to have any error. Maybe I did some misspelling in my code, so we'll check directly. But no, it's correct. And so
well done, Antoine.
Yeah,
first try.
And so indeed here, then we get the computation that is done. And so that is not based anymore, let's say, on the variable number of days per month, but here mostly on the 30 days that are common, whatever the month.
So you see, it's really what Antoine just coded. So we just modify the quantity based on the worked days. So 30 days divided by the actual number of days. So we had the 0.87. So if the employee, as you said, Mohamed, only worked 28 days on the month, and then you see the amount is still the contract rate of 4,000. We do the computation, so 0.87 times 4,000 to have the total amount at the end in the last column.
What you could have as well, maybe in that context, is to add a bit more, let's say, clarity to the employee, because I mean, I'm an employee, I see quantity 0.87, I may not exactly know what it means. Something that we can do as well then is to add two more rules, just maybe above the basic salary. One rule which would be called like a total number of days, and second rule should be actual days, performed by the employee during the month. Of course, maybe not that title, but you get the idea. And so, which will just contain, maybe in terms of quantities, the values in terms of days, so that it will be displayed on the payslip. And for the employee, it's even easier then to understand, okay, that now justifies indeed what are the computation. So here, just simply to say that you don't always need to provide rules that are, some, let's say, salary rules with a certain amount, a total amount. You can also define rules that just contain some variables. Here's the total number of days is a good example of what you can also use in your localization. Okay, well, I think it should answer that question.
Maybe can you do something with this one? I asked for more information.
Can you highlight the question?
Inventory in chart of account.
Yeah, there's no more. Pretty vague.
Inventory in chart of account. So can you have some precise the question maybe? What we have in Odoo is that in your chart of accounts, so in your accounting, you can do some inventory evaluation. So maybe that's what you mean. So you can do that directly from inventory. You can do a inventory evaluation. I don't think it's the subject of today, but feel free to ask. We might see if we can still answer.
Maybe we can help.
And so if you have more question about anything about HR related, payroll related, feel free to ask. And Aya, feel free also to precise your question. We'll see if we can answer. We still stay global consultant, even if we specialize in HR and payroll. In the meanwhile, maybe we can show you some of the great new features we have for the version 18. So let me quickly leave here and show you. We prepared some slides for you to really show you what are the great new features of version 18. So as we explained, payroll is becoming a big focus for Odoo. We have new localization, we have new developers, we have a new PO starting in January. So it's really now, if you're an early adopter, that you really have to be aware that things are changing. So maybe next year you can be among the first one. So again, a competitive advantage by implementing new payroll in Odoo without any additional costs. What is impressive is that in every companies with employees need to manage the payroll, and it's usually a very big cost for companies. So if you can do that internally, you really have a really powerful way to save costs, to have some powerful reporting on your own payroll, and to really make the most of the payroll to maybe give some specific advantages to your employees to really gain a competitive advantage. So I have a happier employees because they maybe have some specific advantages, and then also reduce costs for you. So that being said, let's talk about all the new features we have for Odoo 18.
Indeed, because as you say, like before, let's say dreaming big, that's me that we like to do, of course. We need to also make sure that the product is good enough. And it can be good if we take into account all the feedback that we receive, of course, from the market, and all the things that we could expect to do to perform as well. And that's partially, of course, what explained the things that we're going to show you today as well. I'm maybe going to start here with the warning customization, something that we mentioned quickly just before, to see if we can together decide to create a new warning and see how it can be done, in a database.
So do you see why are those warnings important? The warnings, as Antoine really showed quickly at the beginning, are here in our main dashboard. They really are hints of what you should take care before managing your payroll. And as all the one probably managing payroll in their companies probably know, when you have to manage the payroll, you have a lot of work. So the payroll job is usually really periodic, where you have the moment where you have to pay is a lot of workload, and then as soon as it's done, it's reduce workload for the months, and it would be way more pleasant for the different one managing to have something more regulated, less variable. And one way of doing that is computing those warnings, because those warnings will make sure you have everything ready when you need to compute your pay slips. So those warnings will show you, okay, I'm already missing, I have some conflicts in my work entries that should be taken care of. I have some employees without running contracts. I have invalid configured gender for some employees. So if I correct that before the end of the month, I will have less issue when I'm actually computing my payslip at the end of the month. So let's show maybe how to compute a new one, to configure a new warning for in my payroll application.
Okay. I will start first by making, actually we have a question that is making sense because we mentioned a bit about contract and this one that we have here. And it's just a bit linked actually to that. I see here for payroll, is it possible to have two different contracts for one period of payroll? That's something that is not possible for now in Odoo, but that's a restriction that's going to be released, let's say removed from Odoo in the new versions that are coming up. Because indeed, I think especially so Geoffrey, our product owner, just noticed that it is a need that can come from many different situations in the market. And so yeah, that's a restriction that's going to be removed, I think, from in the next versions.
It has a lot of implications. So it's not something that we advise that if it can be avoided, because usually a lot of things in Odoo are based on the contract. Your time off, when you take time off, is based on the work schedule of your contract, your planning, your employees' data. A lot of things are related to the contract. So we really have to be careful to not have too much impact on the rest of the different flows of Odoo. And that's why by default, you only have one contract at a time. in Odoo.
That's also why it's a bit weird. Maybe some of you will be a bit surprised, but what we suggest to our clients for now, if they are this kind of situation, is maybe to create 2 times the same employee in their company, and so each of them having one different contract. So indeed, so we kind of duplicate data. That's not something that we like to do always, but that's still a way to answer the need if you are looking to do it for now in 17 or 18 even. So yeah, that's something that we can do, and so then have 2 different contracts, and which is this kind of process, as you said, because then you can take time off for each of the corresponding employee, and so you're sure to not have any confusion and, let's say, a cross of data that maybe not with what you are willing to do at the end.
Yeah, and just before showing the warning, I see another question about payroll for Romania. Romania is not yet on the roadmap, partly because we don't have an office there, partly because we don't have anyone giving us all the documentation we need. So if you are a partner, material consulting, that want to implement it, maybe you can follow our smart class. If you have the knowledge for the Romanian localization, we'd be happy to either assist you creating your own localization, or we would be happy to have all your documentation and discuss if it's enough, if we need to dig a bit deeper into what you have to then have the right documentation to create it in standard or with you for you and your clients. So if you want to follow the smart class with Antoine or myself, feel free to contact your account manager or to go in odoo.com to see the different smart classes and look for the payroll smart class.
Great. Okay. So yes. So let's try now to practice a bit and see how the warnings first are built to see how we can modify it afterwards. So here, if I jump to my configuration and access my warnings, I will then have exactly the same list as the one that I have in the dashboard, or maybe a bit longer, of course, because some of my warnings are maybe not displayed for now. Let's take just the first one to take a look at how it is done. And the first thing that we're going to see is that it contains some Python code. So you might then just try to think, okay, so payroll is based on Python code, but that's indeed a bit true for the warning in that case. But here the idea is that it's still quite understandable how it can be done and how it can work as well in the end. So what we see basically, maybe what I can do is just to duplicate it so that I can do whatever I want. And so here, this is my duplicated version. Just maybe to write copy to make sure we identify it. And here, basically, I can remove that. For now, it's not important. And simply here, take a look in between, let's say, the first part here of my code and the second part. And basically, what I need to do when I configure a warning is first to retrieve the set of values that I want to display. And for that, I use something that is very well known, I would say, from the, let's say, from the Odoo architecture framework, which is the search on the environment of a specific model. And so to base it on some condition, and this set of values, then we display it here in my value. So here, for example, we could try actually, because I think it's going to give something as a result. So if I change it here and save, what I'm going to do now is that I look for all the employees, so employees that are employed in my database and that are part of my company, and I'm going to display them in my warning that is called employees without running contracts copy. So for now, of course, it's not really well done, but here if I just come back, okay, so I still, because I still have something to replace.
It's because the if condition, the if condition is based on the value that wasn't employee without contract. That is not. That should be
correct. Of course, it was done on purpose. And so yes, so here if I come back, I can find my 24 employees without running contracts, which is actually then basically all the list of my employees in my database. So now let's try to make something a bit more funny, I don't know, and try to target something else. I know that in the OSP we did something with the cars that were not branded in my database. So here, let's imagine that it's a bit more complicated. But here what you can try, as for example, is to find all the contracts that are expired. Okay, so let's try maybe to do it first. So for that, what I can do is simply here to create one specific filter No, not there actually. It's here. And to add all the conditions that I want to target. And here, for example, I could say I want my status here to be set to expired. And so here, as I am in debug mode, it automatically generates the code that I can use here to let's say insert in my warning. And so if I come back to my warning that I just defined, which is here, I can simply replace the domain that I have in the brackets by the one that I just created. And here, of course, adapt as well the name of my model. And here, I could say this is my contract expired, and this is the one that I want to display at the end in my warning. So you see, like, I don't need to, like, if I know how to use the right tools in Odoo, I can by the end probably get like the right data that are displayed. And here I could say expired contracts, and maybe make it in orange, but I can very easily see it as well in my interface. If I come back, now I have here the 8 expired contracts are displayed directly. They can access in a click to track it. So here's the idea, is just to show you, okay, you can adapt it based on your needs. You don't need to be a developer for that. You can do it still from a very functional point of view. You just need to understand, of course, what you are doing. But that's the one-shot training that you need to do. And then here you can just adapt each of the warning that you have.
And maybe you're a partner that can implement that for your client, giving them a really added value for them to ease their work. So that's what we want with Odoo. It really eases the work of our users. So as a partner, you can put that into place. You can ask us for any help if you need to customize any warning. You can also ask maybe ChatGPT to help you with the code and see directly if it works. So feel free to test that, because those warnings are way more powerful than you think and can really ease the work of any payroll officer. I see another question. So if you have any question about the warnings, feel free to reach out. Some company pay the end of service on yearly basis. Is it possible to handle on Odoo? So what's great is that we have a new more and more people are working on payroll. The whole community is working on payroll. As we said, it's a big focus. And yeah, it's one of the feedback that came this year and the previous years for some countries, that they need to really manage one value based on what happened during the year. So we actually developed a new feature for that. It's called the year-to-date computation. And how can I manage that? I can have in my configuration about payroll. If I'm in version 18, I should be able to find year-to-date. Let me zoom out a bit. I don't have it here.
Okay, that's YTD that is written down, but maybe that's
YTD. Yeah, thanks, Antoine. So year to date, so YTD. Here I can choose the year to date reset date. So when is my year to date computation going back to 0? By default, it's on the 1st of January. And then if I go on my different structures, for example, for the CP200, the monthly pay, I will be able to do year-to-date computation. So in your case, it's based on the end of service, so I won't do it on the monthly pay. But I could go on my termination fee, so the one I'm going to pay when people are leaving, and say, okay, this specific structure will have the year-to-date computation. So having this year-to-date computation will change my different pay slips, and I will be able to compute year-to-year payslip by payslip for the same year. All the salary rule will be like added to each other month by month. And so thanks to that, you can then create a specific salary rules. For example, the basic, the gross yearly salary that will be based on your year-to-date computation, and then do some other computation on it if it's more taxable or not, and then use that in your salary rules to really pay the end of services on a yearly basis.
All right, thank you, Pierre. So let's see if we have maybe some other questions.
So how do you calculate overtime and shifting in payroll? So overtime, usually, how do you compute the overtime of an employee? Well, it will be based on your employee having a basic work schedule, and then he will be coming earlier or after work and work later on in the evening. So we have a comparison on the attendance application. So when you badge in and badge out, to do a comparison with your work schedule. So if I go in my attendance application, and in code, for example, for Audrey, we were using her earlier, I can create a work entry for this time. So check in at 7 and check out at 9. So it's longer than expected. It's already approved. So I should have different work entries for Audrey based on the time she checked in and checked out. So let me now check in the payroll application my work entries. Let me remove the filter and look for Audrey. And you now see automatically Odoo understood that she worked overtime in the morning and in the afternoon. So in the morning, she indeed worked from 7 to 8, so before her work schedule starts. Then a standard working hours from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m., but for this one from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. And after, she worked from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. So here, by comparing attendance and work schedule, you are able to create some overtime work entries that you can use in your different salary rules to, based on those work entries, do some specific adaptation of your salary.
Indeed, because for now, if I decide simply to, let's say, generate my payslip based on that, nothing will happen. I mean, like, as I did not say or mention, oh, I want to, let's say, take care of my overtime hours in my computation of my salary. But for now, that like my overtime hours will not, let's say, have an impact on my basic salary that I computed. So that's something that you need to integrate as well to your solution. As you know, any companies make it different to play with the overtime hours. That's also why here we not really, let's say, impose a way of doing it in Odoo as well. So that's something that needs to be configured. You need to know as well that you can also take advantage of your overtime hours to have some, let's say, extra time off allocation. For that, what you can do is in the time off app to set up, for example, here, let's say, compensatory days. Let's say that I want to take it in hours, and I want to deduct extra hours based on that here, and I will say, yes, it requires an allocation. All right, so yeah, that's it. And so here, if as an employee, I decide I have it extra time, not Audrey, so I'll just do it for myself first. So if I come back to attendance, and so here, so I'm Mitchell admin, or am I Pierre? I don't know. Who am I actually?
I think you're Mitchell admin. Maybe if I look for Mitchell admin, are you in the? Ah no, you are the. I think Mitchell admin is linked to employees, to Pierre's.
Yeah. Okay. So
to
let's try
Pierre employee. So the user Mitchell admin with the employee Pierre.
Okay. Good. Okay. So here indeed, so I added just a few extra time off then for myself. And then if I go to my time off application and I just request a new allocation for my compensatory days, here you will see that automatically it will show me what are the extra hours are performed for now in that specific period of time. And so I can indeed, let's say, deduct them from my, let's say, my balance to get and to justify at least that I want to indeed ask for that allocation of time. So yeah, that's the two possibilities that I see for now in standard about what we can do with the extra hours.
Yeah, either you pay them or either you give them back as time off. You can do partial of both, so that depends on your company's policy. But what's great is that you see the agility Odoo has, and what's important there is that you can choose as a strategic decider in your company, HR officer, CEO, to evaluate your employee making overtime, maybe by giving them extra time off. Maybe some would prefer to be paid for those, but you can do both in Odoo. And so a lot of agility to really make the best tool for your employees and make their life easier.
So I think
a French question.
Yeah, but I think I have an idea for this one. But first, it was mentioning shift as well, I think, in the question. Shift, but I don't know what shift could mean.
Shift could be, can you show maybe the question about shift just above? how do you calculate overtime?
shifting.
Shifting. So what we mean by shift is usually is you will work from one time to another, and so you don't base your time or your pay on the badge in and badge out. So you plan it in advance. For example, waitress will work a specific shift, night shift, day shift, and based on those shifts, we're gonna pay them. So what we showed is that actually then you're not gonna use the work schedule of your employee, you're not gonna use the attendances of your employee, but rather you're gonna use the planning application. And so you can plan here, do some shift for those employees and say, okay, this employee Anita, it's based on those shifts that I define in my planning that I will pay her. So I'm creating the different shifts, and then I have to specify where, well, on her contract, that it's the planning application that should be taken into account, and not here the attendances or the basic work schedule. So let me go on Anita's contract. I can go on the list of contracts here. Look for Anita. That's not the name of the contract, but the employee. And here I have the running contract of Anita. And so I'm not going to say that she should be paid based on the work schedule, but based on the planning, so on the shift she's doing. So by doing so, when I create then the different work entries for Anita, so again, work entries, very powerful. I can see here Anita now is based on the planning application. Okay, we still see some time off taken, some conflict here that I might be able to assess. Yeah, of course I have a conflict because the planning was planned when she took a time off. So here I think the time off wasn't supposed to be taken, so they refused that. I can save and close and then be able to create a payslip for Anita based on the different shifts she had in the planning application.
Yes, great. Okay, so next question, so which is a bit out of the box of the HR workflow, but here, so I'd like to manage my showroom cash register with point of sale. My boss feeds my register to buy what I need, cleaning products, coffee reloads, water bottles. Is it possible? The main issue is that I don't understand your question regarding what is possible. If your question is it possible to just feed your register with some money? Yes, that's something that we call the option to cash in, cash out in your point of sale. This one, indeed. So yes, indeed, where you can explain indeed that you received some money to be able to, to refeed your cash register. But if your question is, am I able then from the point of sale to buy some products as the one that you explained to fulfill your needs? Then no, like the point of sale, as the name is mentioning it, is mainly for selling products. If you mention, let's say, replenishment of product, then it's different. You need to get out of the interface and create your purchase of product out of the point of sale by going into the maybe expense, but at least purchase application. So yeah, that's what you.
But I would say expense is good for that, because if you don't have a card for the card of you're paying yourself for the coffee and all the different things you need. Maybe you're gonna go on the next shop across the street. You're gonna buy everything, and then you can just create a new expense, which would be called coffee for the showroom. And then you say that you paid, for example, for a total of 10 euros. You paid yourself. You can attach the receipt easily to have a proof of what you paid. Maybe you use the money of the counter. So in this case, you don't need to be paid back. You would just need the cash in that we showed before. If you paid yourself, because maybe they didn't give you money early in the morning and you needed your morning coffee, then you can just do that, create the report, and then this will be submitted to your manager. They will approve it. And then either you will be reimbursed on your card directly by a simple journal entry, or we can go back to payroll and this can be reported in your next payslip. And so those 20 euros you paid will be added in your payslip, in the next payslip of the following month.
Indeed. Very good idea, Pierre, for that. All right. I see a question still linked to to the extra hours, which is a question that we received a lot. I think that's one of the most common questions that we have regarding extra hours. Like, can we indeed define some extra rate depending on the type of extra hours that we have? For example, 200% if it is taken during the holidays, 150% if it is during the weekends. So let's say some different rules like this. Here, if we just, let's say, make a step back and understand how the payslip is done in Odoo, what we saw since the beginning is that the payslip are generated first based on what you have here on your work days. And what we have just seen as well is that in that context, I don't know where it is. Yes, I think that it was the one. Well, here, for example. So the overtime hours that we can display. I think you generated one, but
Maybe not in that database.
yeah, no, it is. Yeah, okay. So you see here, actually, by default, now if we just decide to use attendance app to get this, this computation of the overtime hours, we get one type of overtime hours, and that's it. And then, indeed, you can create a rule, as we said, to take into account those overtime hours and apply them to a specific rate to increase your basic salary. But for now, it is not possible, I would say in standard, to just define some rules saying, okay, if I take some extra time off during the weekend versus during the week, I get some different types that are generated in my payroll application. That's something we mentioned it briefly, and we're not go into the details because that's still a work in progress. But let's say that's something that we are aware of and that we are working on as well at the R&D. We have a solution that could answer these needs. For now, my idea for that, but maybe Pierre, you have a different one, would be to manually here just say add some other inputs and just create one other input type per kind of extra hours that you can have with different rate. And so here just count the number of extra hours per employee and you add them to the payslip. And accordingly, you just create some rules that take into account those other inputs in order to be computed, let's say, in the payslip accordingly.
Yeah, I agree. It's the best way of doing it because it's very agile. So you really can add a line, set the number of hours, and then have one rules depending on each other input type. So one for the extra hours during the weekend, during the holidays, and every time compute it differently. But indeed, we are working on something to make all of this automated. So you won't have to create the other input types yourself. You will define some specific attendance rules. So depending on when you work, it will be a different input worked days here. So if you worked in the weekend, automatically it will put some overtime hours in the weekend, some overtime hours with a different rate on the holidays based on your attendance. And then you can do the salary computation based on those and not even need to modify the other inputs here. So already doable, as Antoine showed you, manually here by employee every month, and soon process even more automated with the new attendance feature.
All right, next question. How to calculate the salary for employees that take vacation in the middle of month? I think vacation is not holiday, is it?
Maybe unpaid day.
Yeah. I would say, or maybe someone would just leave the company. But
I think the important thing is that even if holidays on vacation are different, it's one type of moment during the month when you are not there.
Yeah.
So the time off application makes it possible to define when you are not at work and why you're not at work. If it's paid time off, so holiday, you would just take one of the paid time off. If it's vacation by meaning that you are actually not paid, then you can specify a time off that is unpaid. So you can show that in the time off application. Let me show you how I can just put take some paid time off in our month. So maybe for the end of the year to prepare for New Year, I can take some paid time off, or I have unpaid time off. So that's the first way to compute, to define how I'm not going to be there. So as I said, if I choose unpaid, for example, I can look at my different time of type. So I have unpaid here. And if I look at unpaid, I see that I have a work entry type defined on my time of type. So again, everything related. My time of type will define the work entry type in my payroll application. based on this work country type, I will be able to do a different computation. So if it's a not paid time of type or a paid time of type, I won't do the same computation in my salary rule. So of course, we can calculate the salary for employees that take vacation in the middle of the month by taking the vacation and then seeing the result in the payroll application.
So yes, I think here's the key indeed, as you said, is just to make sure that the right data are recorded at the right place. And that's why also we believe that we have also a very higher added value if we can, let's say, grant as much access as possible to all the employees of the company, so that they are able to do all of those tasks that we mentioned in the beginning by themselves, just maybe updating their own information, recording expenses, recording time off, so that by the end the workload as well on the HR people is reduced, and they can mainly take care of the warnings, take care of all the things to be managed per month, and of course the computation of the salary, but without having to do some very repetitive work that have a very low added value for them.
And you added annual leave for vacation. So yeah, so by default, when you have your annual leave, if I took, for example, one of the pay slips we had before, one where we have some time off, here it's unpaid. Let me see if I look one where it's paid time off. Maybe one of those. Sick time off is, for example, sick time off is a paid time off, because if my employee is sick, I'm still gonna pay him. And annual leave for vacation, you also pay your employee for. You are not gonna reduce the salary on that month because he took some paid time off. So here you will see the different type, but both type will still give you the full amount of your salary for that month. In the other way, if you have some unpaid time off, so here in the example for Audrey, you will see here that this unpaid time off will not give you any money for that month and reduce your basic salary. So if you take some unpaid time off, you see the result directly in your work days and the total amount of your basic salary for that month. If it's paid time off, you see that they were taken, but they won't have any impact on your salary for that month.
Maybe what we kind of forgot is to show you how we can define that this work country type is paid and this work country type is not paid. And it's true that this information, you define it at the structure level. So you know where you have all the rules of the salary. Well, that's also where you say, okay, let's just define the set of values that are unpaid. And so that should be considered at 0, as Pierre just mentioned. And so that's where you can indeed just list all of the work country types that should not be, considered as a paid work country type. All right. Okay, so let's see if we have some other questions.
We have maybe a bit of time to show one of the last new features.
Yeah, maybe. Indeed.
Okay, let's go back. So
what do you want to show?
Year-to-date computation, we showed it. We showed the new payslip layout. I'm interested to see the payslip generation wizard is a good one, or maybe the batch payment report. I think we have some time to quickly show both of them.
All right.
Maybe we should start with the payslip generation wizard. So what do we mean by payslip generation wizard? It's the pop-up that will help you generate specific payslip. Let's go back in our database. And here you can see where is this wizard available in my batches here. So I can come here and create a new batch of payslip. So a batch, what is it? It's a folder where you will create several payslip at the same time. So let's create a new batch of payslip. I can create a new one. And here I choose for this month, so December. I have the right period for the generation. I can generate payslip. And here, this is the wizard we are talking about. So this wizard is very helpful to select specific employees. Maybe you have a very big companies and you're gonna do the payslip for all your sales department first. So you don't want to do it for everyone at the same time. I thought I removed let me remove the don't disturb notification. So here I can, for example, say, okay, I'm doing it only for the sales department now. I could base it on job position or a specific structure type. Maybe I have some employees that are working by the hour and some are based on the work schedule. So I have different structure type for those two sets of employee. So I'm going to manage one at a time. So very easy way to do step by step and generate batch by batch your pay slips. And then you will see all the employees that are concerned. Here I have 3 employees in my department, so I can then generate the salary for those 3 employees. So I can generate, and here I have some, we changed the
That's because, yeah, we
90,
changed,
so
yeah.
we have a new rule. The rule that we had before is not taken into account here, so we won't be able to generate it for now for them, but that's the way what we want to really showcase. It's these new pay slips really ease the process of creating specific pay slips for specific employees.
I think that's also a very interesting tool during the double run process that we always suggest our client to do when they decide to move to Odoo Payroll, is that we ask them for quite a long period of time, 1 year ideally, but it could be, of course, less depending on the use case, but it's just to compare then what are the results obtained in Odoo versus the result obtained in the classical way of generating the payslip. And the idea is, yes, by making the comparison, it might be needed at some point to test some specific use cases, and so that here in this wizard, we can very target some very specific job positions, some very specific structure, or some very specific department, and make sure then accordingly to get the right testing that are done in the database, and so compare it as well with what is obtained outside of Odoo.
I see that so when talking about South Africa, we have some partners that worked about South Africa, so I think it's doable as well pretty easily. So feel free to either reach out to Tembelani or to reach out to us to discuss that. And we have another question about Mohamed, very interested about payroll. How to pay the CNSS, Caisse Nationale de Sécurité Sociale, in the payroll app. So here you will have to pay these specific partners some amount each month based on the salary of your employee. So for that, as any line of your payslip, you have to create a specific rules for the CNSS computation. So what we could do is add the right. Yes, we have an example here in Belgium. In Belgium, we have kind of the same. We have also the social secretary. It's called ONSS in Belgium. And so we created a specific rule for the ONSS computation. So you will have to do the same one. So you can create your salary rules, which is called CNSS. You can change the condition based on, here you can say if you have to pay every month, you can say it's always true. And then in the Python code, you will create, here it's a specific computation based only on Belgium, based on the method we have hard-coded behind. But here you could compute all the rules here, which will say, okay, based on my wage, I have to pay X% of this salary to the CNSS for that month, and then put that in my result. And then that result will be computed in my payslip, and I could say it should be paid to the ONSS. So how do I make sure it's paid to another partners? Well, you can show us the field maybe. Here, just below, we have some field that says this rules should be paid to these specific partners. So we want, for example, we would select the CNSS here to say, okay, when we generate all our payslips, then we have our batch of payslips. We can validate them if it's correct. Once it's correct, then we can gonna create the journal entry. So we're gonna validate the full batch to have our draft entry in the accounting. And in the accounting, you will have the accounting entry showing you this rule for these partners, and you can then process that rule and say, okay, my CNSS is that much for all those employees, and then actually manage the payment to the CNSS from the accounting application.
Yes, that's correct. Something that you can do as well if you want, to have a follow-up of this kind of information computation. Let's say have a summary of all your employees and what are the amounts that are paid month after month. For that, you have as well access here to the reporting tab, where you can get a look at the evolution of some of the rules that you may have. So here, actually, we have some ONSS, you see, so it will be the same in your case, where I can actually get indeed take a look at the values that are computed. Well, here it is 0, so it's maybe not a good example, but my point is that here you can then, per employee, for all of the ones that have those kind of data in your payroll application, a sum up of all the values that are computed, and then it's just up to you to select the right starting date, the right period of time, and so you can get this kind of summary, which is also a way maybe for you to, because maybe you need to pay it, but you maybe need to declare it as well to the CNSS at that moment, and so that's a way also to generate a document and to send it to them if they do not expect a specific format, and that having maybe a PDF or an Excel file is enough. Of course, if they need a very specific format to get this information, then you need to develop it, and that's a bit what we have as well here for Belgium, with a lot of, let's say, some very specific reports that are here, of course, to answer some needs regarding the legislation of the country for the payroll.
I think we are almost at the time. We have 5 minutes left. Maybe what we just wanted to show you is that we have a new payment report option. So what happens when you created your batch and it's validated? Well, you need to pay your employees. So you would first create the draft entry for this specific batch. And then you have a smart button that's a new feature as well to really have the link easily from your draft entry to your batch payment. But what's the new feature is that here you have this create payment report option. So if we want to pay employee, of course, we need a bank account for each employee. So in this case, he doesn't have one, so we could create one.
Yeah, maybe let's do it just to see what it looks like.
So
If
here,
I
let's
come
create,
here.
just select a correct kind of bank account for employees. We can then go on the employees pike and in the private information, set the bank account. Oops, my bad. We did the same.
Yes.
All right, we can save.
yes,
And
I
now
need
that
to
I have my bank account, I can validate that it's trusted one, so I can send money to it, go back to my batch, and now create my payment report. Here it created it in CSV directly. So if you open it, you can see it's all the information you need to pay your employees. So this is a very simple way, very simple CSV that you can use for now. We also have different kind of batch payment report depending on your localization. So if you are in Europe, we can use the SEPA payment, so we can use SEPA files, but you need to configure that in your configuration. If you are in the USA, you can use the NASHCA or something like this.
Nasha, I think.
NASHA report to have a specific format for this payment report. But all the other ones, you have this CSV payment report that can be used to have a clear overview of how much you should pay each employee.
Yeah, because it seems as a detail, but if you do not have this kind of option, well, you need to access it from the reporting. But it's true that, going from one, let's say one payslip to another and proceed to the payment by having maybe the information related to the bank account stored somewhere else in Odoo is takes a bit more time. So yeah, that's the idea here, is to make things a bit easy and to continue at the same place, because everything starts from the batch and can also end up here. And yeah, to have access to all of this information directly from the same interface.
Maybe we can conclude. So maybe a big conclusion. Thanks all of you for joining us, for having such interesting questions. Feel free to reach out if you have any more. What you could see is that payroll, it was mainly about payroll. HR is already doing his proof, so maybe payroll is the next big thing of Odoo. You can see all the new features we have this year. We have a lot of localization coming up. It's because everyone is interested about payroll. There is a lot of things to do, and a lot of people are getting into it. So we invite you to join us in the new frenzy. Jump in the train for the payroll evolution and all the new thing we're going to develop. And maybe we can see each other at the Odoo experience this year to show you even more features about payroll, new localization, and discuss with you all about that. Thank you for joining us.
That's it. Thank you, Pierre. And see you then next year for maybe new also Odoo Insider session about payroll.